This anime starts with a salaryman searching for clients. Everyone rejects him, but our protagonist is not one to give up easily. After several attempts, he finally gets a client. Thanks to this, he'll probably get a promotion. But to his bad luck, he gets involved in a police chase, and when the police officer manages to catch a thief, a shot is accidentally fired, killing our protagonist almost instantly. But this story is an isekai, so a voice that seems like a god tells him that he will give him a second chance, on a planet like Earth with seas and continents, but also magic and arcane creatures. Upon reincarnation, he retains his memories, but his appearance changes completely. The first thing he sees there is a dragon, and he's not wearing his usual suit. The voice tells him that it will grant him basic knowledge. In this world, by saying the words, status open, he can see his statistics, just like in a video game. This god also tells him that his race and age, 15 years, are predetermined, but he can decide the rest himself. Then, it wishes him a prosperous life and departs. Checking his status, he decides to call himself Luciel and chooses for abilities, evaluation ability, martial arts, magic control, and intense luck. These abilities will be useful to him later. He also decides to work as a healer, believing that it will be an easy job where he won't have to fight magical beasts like the dragon from earlier. Now, fully prepared and with only 3 silver coins, he decides to head to a city to find work as a healer. Upon arriving in the city, he sees that he needs to pay a toll and show identification. His money probably won't cover it, and he has no identification. Thanks to his skills as a salesman from his previous life, Luciel negotiates with the guard, telling him that he grew up in a small village from which he was cast out when they no longer needed him. He says he's coming to the city to find work as a healer. The guard asks him to wait for a moment. Luciel is not sure if he made a mistake, but in the worst case, he's prepared to run. If you're enjoying the video, please subscribe to help me reach 1,000 subscribers. That being said, let's continue with the video. The guard returns with a blonde woman named Lumina, who asks Luciel if he's looking for a clinic. He responds affirmatively, and then she tells him to follow her. Before following her, he was going to pay the toll, but the guard tells him that healers are exempt from charges. In that short period of time, Lumina has gone far ahead. As he runs to catch up to her, Luciel bumps into some guys. The leader of the group asks where he's rushing to, and our protagonist replies that he was heading to the Healers Guild. This seems to annoy the guy, and he warns Luciel that if he becomes a corrupt healer, he won't let him escape. The group leaves, and they leave Luciel alone. Lumina tells him not to worry about a minor confrontation, and she was ready to intervene if necessary. This suggests that Lumina is quite strong. Upon reaching the guild, Lumina welcomes him, making Luciel blush. There, a redhead named Kururu asks him to fill out a form with his name, age, and race, but he doesn't know what to put for his place of origin. He says he doesn't know if his small village has a name. Kururu tells him it's no problem if he doesn't know, though she wonders if Luciel is an idiot. Kururu leaves, and Luciel approaches Lumina to ask the name of the city they are in. She can't believe how ignorant Luciel is and tells him they are in the Republic of San Shurul, and the city is called Meritoni. Kururu returns with a card and asks Luciel to use his magic on it. When he channels his magic, his data appears on the card. He is currently a rank G healer. This card is something like a healer's license. Luciel asks what he can do to work as a healer, and Lumina gives him 3 options. The first option is Spartan Education, which involves studying spells and then casting them until your magic is exhausted, then resting and repeating this process an infinity of times. The second option is to take out a student loan to study for 3 years. The third option is to work as an apprentice in various places and study magic in his free time. After thinking for a while, Luciel chooses the Spartan Education. Kururu puts her hands to her head and thinks that he couldn't be more foolish, but his reasoning is that no matter how Spartan the education is, he was very persevering in his past life, and if he sets and achieves his goals, he can handle any challenge. Kururu is going to take him to his room, but before leaving, he promises Lumina that he will repay the favor someday. Upon entering his room, the first thing he notices is that there are no windows, only a bed, a desk, and a book. Luciel decides to start with basic spells, and among them, there is one called Heal. To cast this spell, Luciel creates a mental image of a wound closing, and after reciting the spell, a small cloud-like thing appears. Checking his status, he can see that his affinity for holy magic has improved. Luciel says he has enough mana to practice the same spell 9 more times. After spending all his mana, he feels very weak, and his mana recovers very slowly. To spend less mana and recover it faster, he begins to practice his mana control. The next day, Luciel wakes up abruptly, thinking he will be late for work. At that moment, he realizes that his reincarnation is real and not a dream. Excited about his new life, he decides to give his all in his healing practice. He continues to cast spells, but this time, before running out of mana, he practices mana control. After repeating this process over and over, he manages to improve all his statistics. This is motivating for him, and he decides that he won't be discouraged as long as he sees his efforts paying off. Suddenly, someone enters his room, a girl bringing him food. She introduces herself as Monica. On the third day of practice, Lucille attempts the spell he cast at the beginning, and after reciting some words, he successfully conjures heal. His efforts were not in vain. Monica congratulates him and tells him that he can now use the heal spell, but his stay at the guild will cost him a silver coin. Lucille asks her if he should seek Lumina's help for what comes next. Upon realizing that he's the guy Lumina brought, Monica returns his silver coin and apologizes. She also clarifies that Lumina reserved his room for 10 days. This catches Lucille's attention, and he asks about Lumina's status. Monica tells him that she is the captain of the Paladin Regiment of the Church. At this moment, Lucille realizes that meeting Lumina is thanks to his chosen intense luck ability when reincarnating. He imagines this luck ability in his mind as a very peculiar blonde guy. After this conversation, Lucille decides to go look for work at the Adventurers Guild. On the way, he runs into the guy from earlier, whose name is Bazan. Lucille, frightened, approaches to talk to him and immediately apologizes for what happened the other day. One of Bazan's companions tells him he's scaring him. Despite it all, the conversation is friendly until suddenly some adventurers, friends of Bazan, arrive severely wounded. Bazan approaches them worriedly and tells them he warned them not to accept dangerous missions. Their injuries don't look good, and according to one of them, they can't count on the help of a clinic. Lucille recalls that Monica had told him that due to corruption, the guild has no power to punish healers or clinics that charge excessive fees or commit crimes. So, Lucille swears never to become a corrupt healer. After recalling his own words, Lucille offers to heal the wounded adventurers. And that's how Chapter 1 ends. Chapter 2 begins with Lucille trying to heal one of the wounded but failing. This is because he can't concentrate under pressure. However, on the second attempt, he does what he did during his training, imagining a wound closing, and he successfully heals the girl. Lucille continues to heal all the wounded, but when he's about to heal the last one, he runs out of mana, and as seen earlier, this causes extreme fatigue, making him collapse. Later, Lucille is in his room, remembering what happened. In his memories, Bazan tells him that he doesn't need to apologize since, despite one adventurer dying, at least he managed to save the others. Nobody blames Lucille. Still, he feels guilty and promises to improve as a healer. To achieve this, he decides to go to the Adventurers Guild. Upon entering the Adventurers Guild, Lucille sees several intimidating figures, but he doesn't give up on joining and goes to talk to the receptionist. She welcomes him to the guild, and he's fascinated by her rabbit ears. Just like in the Healers Guild, Lucille has to provide his data and then fill out a card with his magic. Thanks to the martial arts ability he chose upon reincarnation, Lucille is able to register as an adventurer. The rabbit girl tells him that if he didn't have that ability, he wouldn't have been able to register. She then explains how guild contracts work. It's simple. They pay you for completing tasks, and the guild keeps a 10% commission. In case of failing a task, you have to pay a fine. The rabbit girl says he is now an adventurer rank H, which is the lowest rank possible. Lucille also mentions that he's a healer and asks the rabbit girl if he can offer his services in exchange for training from the guild. She tells him that it's not up to her, but if he waits a moment, she will find someone of higher authority. A few minutes later, she returns with Brad, a trainer who is large enough to intimidate Lucille. As always, he introduces himself very formally and says he wants to learn to fight and improve his magic. In exchange, he offers his services as a healer. Due to the widespread corruption among healers, Brad asks if Lucille wouldn't prefer to save his precious money and why a healer would want to learn to fight. Lucille responds that he's currently defenseless, and anyone or any monster could defeat him. These words convince Brad, and he tells Lucille that from now on, he'll be the healer for his training room. They agree to start in 6 days, and Brad asks Nanella to take care of the preparations. For some reason, she only introduces herself to Lucille now. He does the same formal introduction, but the adventurers behind him look at him angrily. Nevertheless, just a look from Brad is enough to calm them down. Later, in the Healers Guild, in Lucille's room, Monica brings him his food as usual. He asks her what level of affinity for sacred magic he should aim for, and she tells him that if he reaches level 5 by the age of 20, everyone will say he has a lot of talent. She also says that if he meets that goal, they'll have a date. This motivates Lucille a lot, and he says he will do his best. So, he continues practicing during the days that Lumina paid for him to train in the guild. But the 10 days have come to an end, and today is the day he agreed to meet with Brad. As always, Lucille thanks Kururis and says goodbye. When he enters the Adventurers Guild, everyone is looking at him. He tells the receptionist that he came to train with Brad. She shows him the way to the training room down the stairs. Upon entering the training room, Lucille realizes that he's the only one who came to train that day. Brad tells him he's glad he didn't try to escape from the training. At this moment, Lucille feels like Brad could kill him at any moment, but he says he hopes to learn a lot from him. Brad tells him that not running away when he was intimidating him is already something. However, Lucille's goal is to improve as a healer and not be defenseless against danger, so he's ready to face challenges. Brad can't be convinced by words alone. He needs to see actions, so he immediately puts Lucille through his paces. His first training is simply running, which, since he's not used to it, is enough to make him suffer. However, when he compares it to the time he died, he feels like he's in heaven, although he still collapses from exhaustion. In a change of scene, Nanella is sleeping but wakes up when she hears some screams. These screams come from Lucille, as Brad is making him stretch, saying it's necessary to improve his movements. For the next training, Brad asks Lucille to try to hit him. Lucille kicks him, and Brad's face shows nothing but disappointment. He tells Lucille that he can't believe he's so weak. However, Lucille says that's why he wants the training. Brad sees Lucille's determination, so he asks him to hit him with his arms and legs as hard as he can. Lucille launches an attack, but Brad dodges all of them and tells him he's too slow. Then he gives Lucille a slap, but this isn't enough to discourage him. So, he gets up and tries to hit Brad again, but when he kicks him, Brad counters and easily knocks him down. Lucille gets up for the third time and vows to someday manage to hit him, but that day won't be today, as he ends up on the ground again. While Lucille is on the ground, Brad advises him not to try using what he has recently learned in real battles. He should first master what he learns to the point where he can do it automatically, without thinking. After this advice, he tells him that it's time for the second round. Lucille thought the training was over, but no, clearly, the only possible result is to end up on the ground again, and this time, the training is indeed over. Lucille was going to use his magic to heal himself, but Brad tells him to stop because if he heals naturally instead of using magic, his physical recovery ability will improve. Changing the subject, Lucille expresses his surprise that he's the only one training. Brad explains that this is because adventurers often don't have money, so they go directly into real battles without prior training. The situation for most adventurers is tough, so Brad makes Lucille promise to heal anyone regardless of their race. Before he can respond, some injured adventurers arrive. One of them asks if they will really be healed for free, but the girl says it's probably a scam and they shouldn't have come. However, their expressions change when Lucille approaches them quickly, asking what happened. The girl shows her wound and tells him she was bitten by a wolf. She asks if they will really heal her, and Lucille begins to cast his spell. After saying, "Heal," the girl's wound quickly heals. She thanks him and exclaims that he truly healed her. Lucille internally notes that healers in this city have a bad reputation, and no one trusts them. After healing everyone, Lucille tells Brad that he can only use that spell 8 times a day. But according to Brad, this is enough. He also tells Lucille that he needs to become stronger before he can start training. This is disappointing for Lucille because it means that today wasn't training, just preparation to begin training. As he's going to work as a healer and train in the guild, Brad suggests that he should live there. Lucille says he doesn't have much money, but our sugar daddy Brad responds that it won't cost him anything, and he'll get 3 meals a day. This seems too good to be true for Lucille, so he asks what the catch is. But Brad only wants new adventurers to have a chance to survive, and that can be achieved with Lucille in the guild. He says he wants to save as many lives as possible, not just adventurers but anyone who needs it. In response to these words, Brad says the world would be a better place if all healers were like him. I like the mentality of the protagonist. He's ambitious and wants his new life to be better than the previous one, but he also wants to help others and isn't willing to harm others for his own benefit. In real life, this is what I consider a balanced person. Chapter 3 begins with Lucille taking a short bath, too brief for all the training he did. Brad gives him clean, new clothes and tells him to go to the cafeteria as soon as he's ready. Lucille doesn't know what to do with his dirty clothes, but Nanella arrives to wash his clothes by Brad's orders. Lucille says he can't let her touch his clothes, and she thinks it's because she's half-beast due to her rabbit ears. Lucille clarifies that he would feel bad letting such a pretty girl wash his dirty clothes. This makes Nanella happy, and she quickly approaches to grab his clothes, telling him not to worry. After this cringe scene, Lucille goes to the cafeteria, where finds Brad waiting for him with a banquet. All the food on the table is just for him. After eating, Lucille goes to his new room in the guild and quickly lies down to sleep. Checking the time, he realizes it's only 1916. Being a modern human, he's not used to sleeping so early, so he stretches, practices his healing spells, and meditates until he falls asleep. At breakfast, Lucille goes back to the cafeteria, where Brad introduces him to a cook named Gulgar, who looks like a bear but is actually a werewolf. Gulgar prepares a drink called Substance X. According to him, it has a horrible taste, smell, and appearance, but if Lucille can drink it all, his physical abilities will improve. After the first sip, Lucille feels a horrible taste but manages to endure and drink it all in one go. This not only astonishes Gulgar but also Brad, who is not easily impressed. The energizing effects become noticeable immediately. It's been a week since Lucille joined the Adventurers Guild, and his training with Brad continues. He still can't land a hit, and only manages to take beating after beating. After being knocked down by an uppercut, Lucille gets up with a fake smile, asking Brad to continue the training. He challenges Brad, saying that someday he will manage to hit him. Brad gets excited about the challenge, but Lucille immediately retracts, feeling as if he has opened the gates of hell. Fortunately, a wounded adventurer arrives, and the training is halted. She shows a wound on her back from a bite, and after healing her, she starts crying. Suddenly, another adventurer speaks with an intimidating tone, and Lucille clarifies that he didn't say anything wrong to the girl. The adventurer expresses respect for Lucille for healing both humans and beast people. He mentions that, regardless of being human or beast people, all are his patients. Upon returning to his room, several adventurers look at him suspiciously, a pattern that repeats several times. Lucille reveals in his thoughts that he trains from 7 in the morning until 7 in the evening, eats 3 banquets a day, and practices magic control at night. He is getting used to his new routine and thinks that this new life could be good for him. However, he can't shake off the feeling of people watching him. The next day, he asks Brad about it, and by Brad's reaction, it's clear that Brad was behind it. Brad apologizes and explains that everyone fears Lucille might escape since their lives depend on him. Lucille reminds Brad that they signed a 1-month contract, so at least during that time, he wants them to stop spying him. Otherwise, he'll make Brad drink Substance X with him. The rest of the month passes quickly. His dose of Substance X increases, and more people come to the Adventurers Guild for healing. The last day of the contract arrives. Lucille says he must leave the guild to seek work in a clinic. Although the Adventurers Guild provides everything he needs to live for free, he still has to pay tributes to the Healers Guild. Otherwise, Lucille would prefer to keep training. Brad acts like a sugar daddy and gives Lucille enough money to cover a whole year of tributes. Lucille thinks it's too much, but Brad tells him that thanks to him, fewer adventurers have died, so he should accept it. Then Lucille goes to pay the Healers Guild tributes. Upon returning to the Adventurers Guild, Brad is waiting and drags him to the training room. The scene is not shown, but according to Lucille, the training was tougher than usual. Later, after eating, Brad gives Lucille a spell book since he currently only knows a healing spell. However, he also needs to learn antidote spells to neutralize poisons. Chapter 3 ends with Lucille drinking a huge jug of Substance X and setting a goal to hit Brad before the year ends. Chapter 4 begins with Brad giving Lucille a day off. Instead of being happy, Lucille becomes disheartened because, being a work and training addict, he doesn't know what to do on a day off. Brad suggests that he learns about monsters at the butchery. At the butcher shop, he meets a butcher named Galba, who happens to be Gulger's older brother. After a chat, Galba pulls a boar out of a magic bag and shows Lucille the process, first, removing the skin, then opening it up to remove the organs, and finally selecting the edible parts to sell to other guilds and shops in the city. Brad's intention is for Lucille to learn about the weaknesses of monsters. To practice, Lucille quarters a horned rabbit, describing how the smell of blood fills his nose, and the meat still feels warm. Later, Lucille is washing his clothes stained with blood. He feels ashamed because he always eats meat but was barely able to endure cutting it himself. Nanella approaches, concerned, asking Lucille how he is. Lucille pretends everything is fine, but he feels even worse as seeing Nanella reminds him of the rabbit he had to cut. There's a boring scene of Nanella giving advice to Lucille, but as this is a summary and I am the best YouTuber in the galaxy, I'll skip this part. Lucille has a second day off. He also doesn't know what to do on this day. However, while walking down a corridor, Nanella and another girl grab him by the arms. Additionally, another blonde girl named Manel appears. Lucille hopes they are taking him for what he's thinking, but they are only there to supervise him while he studies. Nanella brings 2 books, an illustrated guide to monsters and a list of the best monster materials for crafting armor. Manel brings books on laws, mythology, and religion from different countries. Melina brings a guide on vegetables, mushrooms, fruits, and medicinal plants. Lucille chooses Manel's books. After this, the 2 girls leave, and Lucille doesn't understand why. Nanella explains that they were just curious about his likes and interests. Also, Brad wants Lucille to acquire practical knowledge, and those books are not the priority. Nanella starts by showing him a map. They are in the city of Meritoni in the Republic of San Shurul, the only country in the world that has banned slavery. Lucille begins studying on his days off while continuing to work as a healer and train on his busy days. Half a year passes since Lucille joined the Adventurers Guild. In the following scene, Lucille and 2 other girls are watching a ranking of adventurers with the highest earnings of the year, with the legacy of the White Wolf at the top. The 2 girls are too close to Lucille, and he asks for some space. However, they get closer, claiming they are just strengthening their bonds. Luckily, Nanella arrives to save him. As everyone notices that Lucille's clothes are too tight, Nanella goes shopping with him. After trying on clothes for a while, they return. Lucille thanks Nanella, who even paid for everything. However, she says not to worry because Brad gave her the money. They continue talking as usual until suddenly, a scream is heard. Lucille quickly goes to check and finds Monica severely injured in a dark alley. The scene changes, and we see Monica waking up. Lucille tells her that he tried to heal her with his healing spell, but it didn't work. Thinking she might be poisoned, he tried cure spell, and she recovered. Lucille asks who could have done this, and Monica responds that it's due to a conflict with corrupt healers. A friend of hers was healed in a clinic but, unable to pay, was sold as a slave in another country. Monica tried to expose them, and mercenaries were sent to get rid of her. According to Monica, these mercenaries were likely hired by Botticelli, a healer who owns the most important clinic in Meritoni. Due to the danger, Lucille asks Nanella if Monica can stay in the Adventurers Guild. She thinks there won't be a problem, but Monica fears adventurers will hate her because she's part of the Healers Guild. Lucille reassures her, mentioning that in the 6 months he's been in the Adventurers Guild, there hasn't been any issue. Later in the cafeteria, Monica thanks Lucille for saving her from certain death. He tells her not to worry, as she had helped him in the past. Still, she asks how much she should pay him for being saved. Lucille realizes Monica is pale, thinking he would ask for a ridiculous amount of money. To calm her, he approaches and says she has always been good to him, so healing her was just returning the favor. This surprises Monica. Lucille suggests that if saving her isn't enough, he can also invite her to eat, praising Gulgar's food. Gulgar decides to prepare her a free meal, and she can't help but cry in gratitude for everyone's kindness. 2 more months pass, and while Lucille and Nanella talk calmly, Brad enters the guild abruptly, saying there are injured adventurers. Upon reaching the inn where the injured adventurers are, Lucille encounters the members of the White Wolf Legacy group. Despite being powerful rank A adventurers, they were defeated. The one with the most severe injury is Bathra, and using heal once is not enough. Repeating his spells several times, Lucille manages to save him, but now he can't save the others as he used up all his mana. Luckily, Brad brought a potion, and thanks to this, he could save most of the adventurers. However, the fatigue was so extreme that Lucille ended up fainting. Upon waking up, Lucille remembers that he couldn't save everyone. This time, he doesn't feel guilt since he knows he's not all-powerful. Nevertheless, he promises the deceased to strive even harder. An entire year has passed since Lucille reincarnated in this world. All his statistics and abilities have improved considerably. The 1-year agreement he had with Brad has come to an end, and Brad asks him what he will do now. Lucille replies that he wants to work in a clinic, charging minimal fees to buy magic books and save more lives. He plans to stay in the city, continue training, and when he improves as a healer and saves enough money, he intends to open an affordable healing clinic for everyone. Brad says it sounds typical of him, extends his hand for a shake, and adds that it has been a very good year. Chapter 5 begins with Lucille returning to the Healers Guild to renew his card. There, he encounters Kururu, who is in a very bad mood because she has been left in charge of the guild since Monica left. Lucille inwardly notes that she doesn't seem very busy, as there is no one else around to attend to. Lucille hands over his card, and when Kururu goes to renew it, she comes out disturbed and asks Lucille what kind of training he underwent, and where he has been living. Lucille responds that he has been living in the Adventurers Guild all this time, and he proceeds to tell her about his daily activities. This way of life seems so extreme to Kururu that she asks Lucille if he is a masochistic pervert. However, Lucille explains that he trains only to survive, and healing people helps him improve his affinity with sacred magic. Kururu suggests that he could have achieved good results by working in a clinic and getting paid. Lucille counters that it's not the same to heal for wealth as it is to receive fair payment for treatment. He insists that he is neither a pervert nor a masochist. Kururu is convinced by his words and apologizes, praising his ambition. She then reveals that with all the progress he has made, he can move from rank G to C. This would make the tribute to the Healers Guild more expensive, but Lucille could gain new abilities and improve existing ones. However, when she mentions that the cost is 90 silver coins, Lucille's world crumbles. Fortunately, Sugar Daddy Brad arrives to save the day, paying the equivalent of a gold coin in silver coins. He tells Lucille that he wants him to stay in the Adventurers Guild and promises him a salary this time. Lucille thinks it's perfect, and Kururu asks if he's sure. Lucille expresses his trust in Brad, stating that he is his trainer, and Kururu approves the transfer. Upon returning, Lucille feels at home again, although he received mockery from everyone since he didn't take a single day to come back. When they gather for dinner, everyone welcomes him. Gulgar even prepares Substance X for him. After some irrelevant words from Lucille, they all toast with him. They can barely stand the smell of Substance X and can't believe Lucille is drinking it, so he gets the nickname, Masochist, for the second time. After the toast, Lucille sits alone to eat, as no one approaches him due to the lingering smell of Substance X. At least Bazan comes over to talk to him, holding his nose. The first thing Bazan asks is if Lucille likes men. Lucille didn't expect this question, and Bazan tells him that he always sees him training but never trying to flirt with a receptionist. Lucille says that if he tried, Brad would kill him. The conversation continues normally, but someone from Bazan's group insists on asking the same question about Lucille's preferences. Lucille reaffirms that he doesn't, and Sekhiroth suggests taking him out for nighttime activities in that case. The scene changes, and a man is heard talking to his subordinates, complaining that this year the slave trade and their income have halved, blaming it on a healer working in the Adventurers Guild. The next day, this man shows up at the Adventurers Guild looking for Lucille, calling him an insolent and ignorant brat. He introduces himself as the owner of the most famous clinic in Meritoni, Botticelli, the healer who likely sent the mercenaries after Monica. He orders Lucille to leave the guild and work at his clinic from now on. However, Lucille refuses. Botticelli claims that Lucille is in no position to refuse, stating that since Lucille joined the guild, his number of patients has halved. Lucille argues that it's due to the horrible reputation of Botticelli's clinic. Trying to persuade him, Lucille asks about the magic used for patients with severe injuries, and Botticelli reveals they only use high heal, a high-level healing magic that costs 30 gold coins. When Lucille questions what happens if the patient can't pay, Botticelli refuses to answer. Lucille boldly declares in front of everyone that Botticelli sells his indebted patients as slaves to foreign countries. They continue debating with opposing ideals. Lucille believes magic is meant to save people, even if it means charging less to save more lives, while Botticelli is solely focused on money, even selling his patients if they can't pay. Botticelli admits he was once like Lucille but faced failed attempts at saving patients and being attacked for it. This time, the corrupt healer orders his subordinates to kill Lucille, but Brod grabs them by the neck. Botticelli, intimidated by Brod, screams and flees with his subordinates. Now Lucille has problems with someone of great influence and power, so Brod tells him that from now on, he will train as a gladiator to be able to defend himself. In addition to doubling his training, he must eat double and drink double the substance X. Lucille is not putting in little effort currently, so doubling all his efforts is a serious matter. Obviously, he is not convinced, but in front of Brod, he has no choice but to obey. The training is even more severe than before, and the adventurers who see him again give him the nickname of Masochistic Zombie Healer. Now everyone in the guild calls him that. Recently, more people are training, catching Lucille's attention. Monica tells him that this is due to his influence, as everyone wants to follow his example. Later in the training, Brod tells Lucille to use a barrier spell, only to throw him forcefully to the ground. He mentions that the spell is strong, as he launched it with considerable force, but Lucille is neither unconscious nor dead. Brod warns him that in a surprise attack, no one will give him a heads up, and this is no longer like the previous training sessions. From now on, he could sustain serious injuries if he's not vigilant. Additionally, they will start using weapons. There was 1 year since Lucille has started to train with Brod and now is officially a Brod's apprentice. There's a new rule too: Lucille is forbidden from checking his statistics. According to Brod, this is to ensure Lucille doesn't lose sight of what's important by focusing solely on the numbers. Brod adds that no matter how good his numbers are, if his head is cut off, he'll die. Even Brod himself would die if Lucille manages to stab him in the neck with a sword. Lucille is not only learning to use a sword and shield. In his other training sessions, he practices with spears, bows, and the usual hand-to-hand combat, all while not forgetting his study and training in magic. Botticelli receives a report that Lucille is only charging 1 silver coin per hour. This infuriates him as it makes himself appear greedy. However, his expression changes when he comes up with an idea. He writes a letter to the guild headquarters of the healers, stating essentially that Lucille is interfering with his business by charging too little. But because Lucille has talent, he wants him promoted and transferred to another city. And that concludes Chapter 5. Chapter 6 begins 6 months after the confrontation between Lucille and Botticelli. Both Brod and Gulgar notice that he is much more robust than before. Lucille adds that besides becoming stronger, he is also overcoming his fear of swords, thanks to having received several cutting wounds. Gulgar appears disturbed upon hearing about Lucille's intense training, but he mentions that it was to be expected from the demon master and his masochistic zombie apprentice. Suddenly, Nanella arrives with a letter for Lucille. This letter comes from the Holy Church of Shurul, the headquarters of the Healers Guild. In summary, the letter, directly drafted by the Pope, praises Lucille's skills for reaching level 5 in sacred magic. It states that Lucille must relocate to the headquarters as soon as his contract with the Adventurers Guild ends in the 6th month of this year. Brod says that this is obviously the work of Botticelli, who aims to send Lucille to another city to continue with his business. Brod adds that this is not a danger to Lucille. Botticelli wants to prevent adventurers from being healed for free so that they have no choice but to go to him. In a scene change, we see Lucille struggling with the number of patients. Without mana, he can't do anything. However, Gulgar arrives with a jug of Substance X, as it also helps to replenish mana. 6 months pass quickly, and Lucille is now a rank A healer. Before leaving, he asks Brod to accompany him to the cemetery. There, he tells Brod that since he joined the guild 2 years ago, he saved as many lives as he could. However, he couldn't save everyone. Lucille expresses his concern that when he leaves, clinics like Botticelli's will continue with their usual practices. With this in mind, Lucille asks Brod to create a course for newcomers, teaching them how to fight and identify medicinal plants. These courses could be taught by high-ranking adventurers or guild employees. Brod asks why he's making this request. Lucio responds by affirming that without Brod, he wouldn't have been able to improve as much as he did. When he arrived at the guild, he received help from many people, and he wants new adventurers to receive at least some of the assistance he got. If they train and stay informed, clinics will have fewer patients, and there will be fewer deaths even when Lucille is not around. Brod agrees to fulfill Lucille's request. Before departing, Brod calls out to Monica and Nanella to cease their hiding. Evidently, he could sense their presence. They approach, and Lucille expresses his gratitude, acknowledging that it's thanks to them that he could endure the rigorous training. He couldn't evade it if they were watching. The trio pledges to reunite someday, expressing their mutual gratitude. Later at the reception, Lucille renews his guild card and is now an E-rank adventurer. Before leaving, he promises Brod that he will come back to challenge him. Brod says he would do anything if Lucille succeeds, so Lucille tells him he must drink 5 mugs of Substance X. An adventurer informs them that the carriage is ready. Before departing, Lucille thanks everyone by bowing to them. He then gives Lucille a gift from the entire guild, a magical bag where he can store 10 items regardless of size and some money. Touched by the guild's show of appreciation, Lucille starts crying. Upon reaching his carriage, Lucille encounters Bazan and his group, making him cry again.